Hey friends, welcome to the Health Simple Show. I'm your host, Kyle Reedhead, and I interview health and wellness experts from around the world to help you live healthy, happy, and stress-free. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and if you have any questions about anything we talk about through this episode, just comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Enjoy the show. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Health Simple Radio. Today, I am joined with Phil Escott, who has a really cool story and is doing a hell of a lot in the health, wellness, biohacking, whatever you want to call it, space. So I'm really excited to dive into a lot of different topics here. But Phil, first, welcome to Health Simple Radio.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you for coming on kind of last minute. I was just introduced to Phil by Matt Maruka, who was on the show a few weeks ago. And he was like, you got to interview this guy, Phil. He's doing the Carnivore Diet. He's written some books. He's just a badass dude. And I was like, all right, let's do this. So Phil, why don't you just introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us kind of who you are and a little bit about your story and what got you into the things you're doing today.
Sure. Yeah, Matt's cool, isn't he? I mean, all that knowledge at 19 years old, it's outrageous.
It's incredible. I keep meeting up with him here in Bali because he just keeps spitting so much knowledge.
Yeah. That looks like a pair of raw glasses to me that you got on.
Yeah, I've
got some of them. Yeah.
It's 8 p.m.
Okay,
here,
so
I needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So who am I? Well, I'm a drummer, actually, from the UK. I spent most of my life in pursuit of sort of spiritual things and got stuck in vegetarianism and veganism alongside that for sort of 30 odd years and had a gradual decline in health, which came to a head in 2010 when I ended up really fat, and I had all kinds of things that I'd ignored, like rosacea, fatty liver, kidney stones, and then the big one that really hit was psoriatic arthritis. And that really crippled me. You know, I couldn't play drums, I couldn't walk, I was sort of lying on the sofa and just researching, really. And I already thought I knew a lot about diet and lifestyle and that kind of thing. And I had to admit that I didn't in the end, because it just wasn't working, you know, and I ended up a very emaciated 120 pounds from sort of a year of panicking and going vegan and doing all this juicing and all that kind of thing and fasting like crazy because every food would kick off the symptoms. And in the end, I came around to discovering people like Natasha Campbell-McBride on about all the GAPS diet and rebuilding the gut. And I got onto that and things started to improve slowly. Well, you know, there's an initial very fast improvement and then it sort of tails off after a bit. And I experimented with all of that and got into Jack Kruse's work as well, like Matt, you know, and he was a blessing. He really was. The stuff that he came out with really was the foundation of my healing, putting into practice all the light and EMFs and all that kind of thing. And then I got into the whole emotional side of it, emotional balancing, that kind of thing, and trying to figure out all the places where you're a complete idiot and fix them. And they have so much of a direct impact on the physical body. It's very interesting with arthritis. It's a very, very cool disease because it can go anywhere in the body and they relate to different emotions. So I started to pick up on that. I was healing one or two joints with certain emotional blocks that, you know, while the other joints were raging. Then that comes to about 2015 when I decided that I really didn't like vegetables. I was bored with them. I didn't really want to eat them anymore. You know, they're just sponges for butter. Come on, no one likes vegetables. They just like putting butter on them. So I packed it in. You know, I'd heard quite a bit about this carnivore diet, eating carnivore. It was in the sort of early days before it blew up, I guess. But there are people who've been doing it decades. I say I've been doing it 4 years, and that sounds a long time. But actually, you know, there's people decades into it, and they're absolutely fine. And so that was the time I ate my last plant. No, actually, I lie. I did have one handful of berries last autumn when I was out night fishing, and I found some growing behind me, some blackberries, so I ate them. And clearly, according to vegans, that's probably what's kept me alive all this time. But that's the only plant matter I've had, and I've had nothing but improving health. I'm effortlessly lean. I could do with training a bit more, put back some of that muscle.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about the carnivore diet is I did train for one winter, like 2013, 2014, and put back about 30 pounds or so of the lost muscle very quickly.
Wow.
But then, I mean, I guess it's muscle memory as well, isn't it? It's not so difficult. But now, since then, I haven't really trained. I've only just started again in the past couple of months. It's very interesting because it fell off on veganism. All my muscle fell off. But in that time, the last 4 years or so, no muscle's fallen off. It's amazing, really. You know, you can just sit there and it actually kind of maintains itself. And so you've got to train if you want to put some on. But the carnivore is quite extraordinary. It just seems to fuel all these parts of the body. It's incredibly nourishing, and I love it. You know, initially there's some things you miss. You know, I find you miss sort of sweet potatoes, things like that. But the actual green vegetables now, all they did was give me really bad kidney stones. You know, they're so full of oxalates. And they say it's meat that gives you that. But since I've been on the meat, absolutely no problems with kidney stones. But I had to have one lasered out of the ureter sort of a little while into going keto, not carnivore, but back in 2012 or so. And that was, I thought, oh no, it's the meat, you know, but it wasn't. It was the oxalates from all the spinach I'd been juicing. And it's been an interesting journey. So now I just do consults for people and go into all aspects of their health, really, all the Jack Kruse stuff, the carnivore stuff, the emotional stuff. Mm-hmm. I see incredible healing. I've never seen healing so good as on the carnivore diet. Does everybody need to do it? No. You know, I mean, if we eat locally and seasonally and get enough sun, we'll be fine if we don't have grains and seed oils or whatever. But for the people who are already broken, it's an incredibly powerful intervention. And even people who are coming across from a keto diet, you know, eating a few vegetables along with their meat and lots of fats and whatever, they're noticing. I see things like people finally reversing their MS, things like that. You know, the more complicated things seem to just disappear when the last of the plant matter's cut out. So, you know, I'm living proof that you don't get scurvy and nothing too bad happens, at least in the first 4 years. So far, I fail to see what's about to kill me if it's reversed all these things. But there we go. That kind of comes up to the present day. And I have this big Facebook group that I'm very active on. A few of them, actually. One for rheumatoid and psoriatic arthritis, one for carnivore, and one for the sort of little bit beyond the beyond stuff, you know.
You know what? I've seen and heard so many people talk amazing things about the carnivore diet. I mean, obviously you have a lot of people saying some bad things about it, but they've never actually tried it or never done it. So I've been so eager to get someone on and talk about this. So I'm really excited. Before I get into carnivore diet though, what I find really interesting about you is the way that you frame the arthritis that you suffered from. I mean, you said it's a cool disease earlier in this podcast already. Your book is called Arthritis, the Best Thing That's Ever Happened to Me. So you can tell the emotional work that you've done has definitely worked for you to frame arthritis in that way. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I think most people, when they have disease, they say they hate it. You know, I'm overweight and I hate it. I have this and that. You know, you've kind of just completely changed that.
Yeah, well, you know, there's an old phrase, isn't there? What we resist persists. Mm-hmm. And I think the main root of all of our disconnects, all of these ancestral disconnects that we have, is not surrendering to what's happening and not learning from it. You know, as soon as something goes wrong, we don't go, hang on, decades we've been doing stuff wrong and now something's blown up. This is going to be a long journey. It's going to be a big lesson, but I'm going to come out even better the other side. Mm-hmm. What we do is we run to medical practitioners to kill the symptoms. And, you know, that never really works. Not for chronic disease. They do, you know, people say I'm against doctors, but they do miraculous things for acute stuff and surgery and, you know, whenever they're really needed, trauma. But, you know, in chronic disease, let's face it, they're not getting anywhere. No. I started to see it. I panicked as well, like anybody else would. And I went to a rheumatologist and I went into his office and he's saying, right, yes, you've got this and that, and you'll have to take these meds for the rest of your life. Diet won't work, and it's completely incurable. But, the only relief you'll get is with our pills. And it just didn't ring true to me. I remember one day saying to him that I don't have arthritis from a methotrexate deficiency.
Absolutely.
And so, I'm going to find this out. And I remember he said to me, why won't you do it? Obviously, these people don't like it when you question them. And I said, well, if there is no natural way out of this, there's just no magic in the world. I've got to find out how to do this. And I went down so many wrong paths. I think that's why I'm quite good at Skyping and talking to people and helping them through it, because I'm an idiot. I mean, I was so much of an idiot to get into that state in the first place, because I knew, a lot of the things I was doing wrong, I knew were wrong. I was gorging on wheat and dairy, and I knew that was wrong. Okay, I thought that all the veg were great and the rice and the dal and all that sort of thing. I thought they were very healthy. But there was a lot of things I knew were wrong. So both of them piled on top of each other. It was sort of like a sad vegetarian diet, and then alternating with veganism, and little times where I tried Atkins and the weight would fall off and I'd feel so much better. And then I'd think after a couple of weeks, I better get back onto my healthy diet. And then I was back on the antacids and, pooing about 10 times a day and all this crap. So why I think it's such a good thing is that I just feel it's led me to so many things. If you can take the time to just chill out and look at your symptoms and have faith, if you can get the confidence to have to say, okay, let's re-examine everything here. Let's look at every single little aspect of my life and see where things are going wrong and see how they all add up to a little piece of the puzzle, one little square of a Rubik's cube, to put this health puzzle back together again. And as you go on and you get these results and you get more confident, it's fantastic. This is why I start with people with the carnivore diet, because it's so outlandish to most people. It's so insane, everything that you're being told not to do. A friend of mine says, isn't it funny that all the problems blamed on meat and saturated fat disappear when all you eat is meat and saturated fat? And this is what happens when most people don't have the guts to do it. So to me, it's breaking through that brainwashing and getting people to try it, and they get such spectacular results. Then you can lead them into the rest. Now, I think Matt and Jack Cruz are really spot on, that it's about light. I think it's actually about a connection to the absolute, if you like, at the root of it, and then down through the emotional stuff into the light stuff, and then into the food stuff. That kind of the way that things go from the subtle to the gross as they manifest. And illness is no different. And so as you learn all the little bits in your life that you're messing up, that's keeping you sick, that made you sick in the first place, you just discover so many things about yourself, and you end up with so much confidence in the universe. I used to be such a hypochondriac. I'd think, oh, what's that? Well, I've got this pain here. It must be cancer. I've got this lump. Oh, God, that's a tumor, I forgot something. I walked into a room and I forgot. I've got Alzheimer's, You get all this nonsense because that's what everybody says. There are these horrible diseases and there's no way out. And you're going to get them when you get to a certain age. And, certain age, though. I started being a hypochondriac about 18 when I blew my brain out with way too many hallucinogenic mushrooms for a couple of months and did nothing else but take them. And that was, in fact, in a way, the root of my body learning how to not surrender, how to resist what is, because it sort of left me in a bit of a bizarre state. I think they're very healing, these things, used right, but I certainly didn't use them right. And so now I just feel like everything I've got I kind of owe to the arthritis. I was always interested in all this diet and lifestyle. I wrote my first book on exercise and training and Ayurvedic medicine and diet and whatever back in '96. And I look back at that now, and it was just a result of a whole load of brainwashing. It was everything was wrong with it. And if you look deeply into Ayurveda, it says that in the old Charak Samhita and Baba Prakash, these old texts, and they say that there is nothing as nourishing for the human body as meat, and meat is like nectar like amrits, like nectar. And, all these Ayurvedic practitioners are saying, oh, you must be vegetarian, and talking about all of this. And it just never was that. It's just, I think when the Hinduism came in, just like when the Seventh-day Adventists came in over here, and it kind of gets changed around. So picking people's brainwashing apart and getting them to try this for 30 days, then you've got them. Yeah. Because they always have spectacular results. And then you can lead them down the path of really, perhaps their rheumatologist doesn't know much. Perhaps there's a whole load of other things that we've been lied to about. Yeah, that it's okay to look at phones and tablets late at night, that you should get all these LED bulbs because they're save energy and you're saving the planet, that, burping cows cause climate change, all of this total nonsense. And then you can start to pick it apart and have some discrimination and have a lot more faith. Now I just have a much more of a feeling of independence, I guess, as well, because if a symptom comes up now, it's like, oh, that's interesting. What have I done wrong?
Yeah. It's a little puzzle.
What have I been messing about? Yeah, it's fun. So you listen to it and you do it. You don't go running to the doctor. So there you go. That's why I think it's improved me.
You know what? There's nothing more important than really getting so in tune with your body and your mind that, you have a symptom come on and it's like, okay, what did I do wrong? Like most people are nowhere near that in tune with their body to go, okay, what did I do wrong? Because they're doing so many things. But to be that in tune and just go, okay, let's look at this now with the puzzle and be able to experiment. Like that's just so awesome to be able to do with the body. That's why I love the human body and I love science, because we don't know much, to be honest. We don't know anything. And it's funny how much we actually are getting wrong. As you just mentioned, so many different things that we thought were so true, but we're realizing we're completely wrong. You're no longer have arthritis, right? Or you're no longer suffering from it?
No. I mean, I've got one wrist that doesn't bend so great, but I still play drums perfectly. I don't notice it. But that's been going on since the early 90s. It was just never diagnosed. I've got one knee that looks a bit weird, but the inflammation is out of it all. Yeah, I've got it out of all, even without damage or even any hint that it was ever there in sort of 90% of the joints that were affected, or 95 probably. I had a lot of joints affected. Yeah.
And did you try, what kind of things were you trying before the carnivore diet? You mentioned like the light and stuff. Was that before you went carnivore? And did these kind of things help, or was the carnivore diet that really is when you saw the biggest change?
Well, the biggest change, I guess, was the keto diet.
Okay.
Because I came across from veganism, because I was kind of vegetarian, really. I thought, I've got to go even more towards that end, right? I've got to go vegan. I've got to go raw vegan. Now I've got to go fruitarian. Now I've just got to have green juices, and I've got to do extended water fasts of like 5-10 days, And I did all that. And yes, it did some good, but mostly when I wasn't eating. And as soon as I reintroduced any plant foods, which was, 100% of my diet back then, the symptoms would flare up again. So I became scared of eating and just lost so much weight and ended up, so skinny. And that, well, I was doing a lot of things. I had this massive routine. I would go into the bathroom in the morning and I'd do all these enemas, and then eventually into cold baths, which actually did do some good. But that was around the time where I started keto. But it was everything. God, I tried everything, every supplement, every herb, every Ayurvedic cure, every everything I could think of. Castor oil packing. I tell you one thing that did do some good was liver flushing, the old Andreas Moritz thing, where you're doing the sort of Epsom salt and olive oil liver flush. And I ended up doing 40 of those monthly, sometimes every 2 weekly. I really went for it. I mean, I was so desperate.
Yeah, you're all
I did the old Tim Sheaf thing of drinking your own piss, mostly when people go off a vegan diet and say, I'm no longer vegan, I can't take it anymore, I've been drinking piss, all that sort of thing. The vegans go, oh, well, it was because of drinking piss. You go, no, you get to a stage where you're so desperate, you're doing all these crazy things. You're just, picking everything you can off the internet and just trying them. I'd distilled water, I bought an expensive distiller and drank nothing but a gallon of distilled water every day. And because they say, oh, that chelates everything. You're thinking you have to rip everything out, all the toxins out. You have to detox everything. I don't believe that's how the body works actually anymore. But I was doing that, and then suddenly I woke up and I couldn't taste sweet things, and then I couldn't taste savory things, couldn't taste anything. I had no sense of taste, and I thought, okay, well, researching into it, this is a brain tumor, or it's Bell's palsy, or it's a zinc deficiency. So I supplemented with zinc, and my taste came back over the next couple of months. But it was a horrible experience of, like, I was so skinny at the time, I was trying to eat enough to put weight back on. It wasn't happening. And to have food that didn't taste like anything, it was almost like the negative of taste. It doesn't go into words. It's like trying to describe a color or something. But it was a revolting experience just putting food in your mouth and chewing. It was worse than it having no taste. It was like a negative taste. It was weird. So obviously I'd stripped my body of zinc from doing all this distilled water thing. You know, even people who are into it generally say don't do it for more than a couple of months. So now I'd say it's a really terrible thing to do. You know, maybe it has some use in getting some heavy metals out or something. I don't know. But you know, you don't really want to strip all the zinc out of your body, which I did. So yeah, I tried, so many things. I can't tell. Even those Hulda Clark zappers where you hold these things. She did this book, The Cure for All Diseases, and it's like you hold these electrical things sitting in front of the TV or whatever. So I'm sitting in front of the TV, blue light in my face, holding these electrical things, thinking this is going to kill all the parasites that are in my liver that's causing arthritis. And it's like, you know, the weird ideas you have. And then eventually you find certain good things in a certain area and in another area and in another area. And then you notice some other really, really bright people all around the world figuring it out, doctors coming across to it, you know, that kind of thing. And then you discover Jack, and he's on about eating a shitload of seafood. And I did, you know, I ended up with such brain fog. I didn't even know what I was doing, walking from one room to another. And my first experiment, it was just, I just ate fish for a week, coming straight off vegan. And I ate fish for a week, and all my brain fog disappeared. Loads of inflammation disappeared. And it was like, wow, there's something I can eat. You know, and then I started adding other things. Oh yeah, right, a keto diet, add all the avocados and things like that. You know, I think it just keeps it ticking over, particularly if you live in the north of England. You know, where are avocados going to grow in the north of England like I do? So the circadian signaling is wrong. And it's, you know, it's not even environmental, I don't think there's anything environmental whatsoever about veganism. I think if you want to kill the most animals, go vegan. So I don't get the environmental aspect either. But, you know, with all the ones that get ripped up in the fields and destroyed, and all the habitats destroyed for grains, and they say it's all fed to the cattle, but, you know, that shouldn't happen either. So we're in agreement on that. So, but anyway, you know, there was so many things and so many revelations. It was an incredible time. See, I was really fortunate, and I'm broke now, but I had a load of money at the time.
I was gonna ask that. You're a drummer. I was like, where are you getting all the funds to do all this stuff?
Well, you know, I had a bunch of money back then. We had, I had an inheritance. I had a property company. You know, we've still got a few properties dotted around. We're all right. We're fine. Say we're broke. You know, it's getting a bit sketchy, but with what I'm doing now, it's picking up. But at the time, I had a load of money, so I could sit around. So I know that other people can't do this. You know, I was privileged enough to be able to sit around, you know, for 12 hours a day for 2 years, and then sort of probably 6 hours a day for another 2 years, and probably not far off that now, even if you consider that, you know, I mean, yesterday I started listening to your podcast, and I've probably listened to about, I don't know, 6 of them now, because you can just put the headphones in, you know, on airplane mode, please, guys, you listen to it on the phone, but, you know, put the headphones in and wander around, and whatever you're doing, you know, you can listen to podcasts. I was rebuilding my drum kit in a different way last night, just to faff about and listen to a couple of them. You know, you can do this, and the education you can have from doing this, you know, so many things you learn. And you can have some great doctor or scientist or somebody with an amazing testimonial anecdote, you know, whatever, in your headphones the whole time. And it's like being at university kind of 24/7.
Absolutely.
And so if your motivation is there, and I still learn, you know, so much. I just learn so much every day, and it blows me away. You know, on the diet front, it's kind of law of diminishing returns now, and I think that it's funny, after studying diet for like 30 years, I think, why didn't I just look at a cave painting? You know, there's a dude and he's got a stick, and there's a mammoth. You know, what's he doing? He's, you know, I often say he's not tickling it, is he? There's no broccoli there. There's not. It's obvious what's happening. And you know, it was going to be yeah. And to me, it seems really obvious. Fatty ruminant animals, eat them, and it's extraordinary what happens. It really is extraordinary what happens. And now, when you see all the mainstream diet advice and this vegan movement and stuff, and the way people have got things so backwards, it's crazy. I can't look. People say to me, "Oh, look at this diet program on the TV." I can't watch them. You know, I can't watch them. I'll listen to 100 podcasts, but a diet program on the TV, no thanks. That's it's always absolutely crazy. You might find one little thing that's right in it in an hour, and you think no layperson who's watching that is ever going to pick out that that's the one thing they should be listening to. You know,
absolutely.
It's crazy.
TV and who knows how long. I can't even handle it. So I want to dive deep into the carnivore diet and ask a bunch of questions, but I just want to know what does your daily like meal plan look like? Like, what do you eat in a day?
Okay. Well, I eat fizzy water's not a good idea on a podcast, is it? I'll be burping her. I eat, well, you know, I eat 1 or 2 meals a day. Okay. It sort of averages out at about 3 meals every 2 days. Well, actually 2 meals a day recently, because I've been training, I seem to be getting a bit hungrier. So the first meal is very often burgers, which is like just made up on my own, not some rubbish you'd buy from a shop with gluten in it or anything. You know, just some ground beef with some salt in it, fried up in some tallow, and a load of egg yolks all over the top. It's just so delicious. You know, I used to put a load of butter on, but I actually, in the past couple of months, I gave up butter just as an experiment. It was the last dairy I was eating, and I could not believe the difference.
Really?
You know, there was a load of sinus issues cleared up that I thought were just to do with the stuffy central heating in the house. About, let's say, 8 to 10 pounds of fat fell off me, which is pretty much the last fat I had. And I was eating just as much. And I thought, wow, you know, there's a load of things that we sometimes don't know how good it's possible to feel. And I honestly believe that the best you're going to feel is on all meat with no dairy. Some people are absolutely fine with butter. You know, if you're not already broken, you'd be fine with it. But excuse me. So yeah, so I'll have something like that in the morning. Made not egg yolks all the time, but I don't eat the whites. They can be kind of inflammatory. I have, and then my craze at the moment is lamb. In England, it's very easy to get hold of. It's always grass fed. We go to the local farm and we get all the bones to make the bone stock. And so I'll have a load of roast lamb. You know, I've roasted one this morning. There's a leg of lamb sitting down there, and I'll chop it up and I'll warm it up in some bone broth as a gravy with some salt. I'll eat a big bowl of that, and that's probably the second meal. Or I might have steak. Every now and again, I'll have oysters. I think Matt's right; they're absolute medicine.
Yeah.
So we'll grab a few oysters and we eat liver. So, you know, the kids eat the same, plus a bit of fruit and a little bit of Greek yogurt and honey, that kind of thing, and they're absolutely and utterly fine. I have, what else do I have? I don't eat pork or chicken much. I think it's fine for most people, but it can be kind of inflammatory. Again, I heard somebody, I think it was on one of your podcasts this morning, actually, didn't they say, you are what you eat eats?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's absolutely spot on, because, you know, I think of chicken as just walking corn. Because if a chicken was allowed to roam around and eat all the bugs and frogs and whatever it is that it would eat alongside plant matter that it chose for itself, it would probably be great. But if it's been eating corn, it's pretty inflammatory.
Yeah, and
it's the same with pork as well. You know, it can be very dodgy for somebody, particularly with autoimmunity. The crackling on the outside seems to be nice, but we've got this trick. Again, some of the most nutritious things, you see, people say it's expensive and whatever, but some of the most nutritious cuts of meat you can get pretty much for free or cheap from butchers in England, because they just throw it out, the bones, the crackling, the skin off the pig. And so what we do, and I don't eat much pork, but we like the crackling. That's great. That's kind of like Doritos for carnivores. so we'll get a beef joint and wrap it up in the pig skin, and then you get crackling, because if you just do it in the oven, it gets too dry and whatever and brittle on its own. And so things like that, really. Sometimes I'll have salmon.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, really.
Seems so simple when all you're eating is just meat and fish. So let's talk about a little bit about the idea of carnivore. Where did this even come from? Why do we think that this is a good thing? You can talk about it from like an evolutionary standpoint first, and then maybe we can dive into like what the science is saying as well. But just because I know there's a lot of listeners out here, they're like, this guy's crazy. Like, what's he talking about? Who eats?
Yeah. Well, every carnivore, every 100% carnivore that I've met, there was a time when we thought it was crazy. Nobody ever woke up and went, I'm going to eat meat all day. Well, actually, a couple of people did, but, not many. We're usually a bit too brainwashed for that. So why is it crazy? It seems crazy because we're told we need all these, fiber and polyphenols and all of that sort of thing. And nobody's ever going to drop them out because we've been told that they're so essential. We've got to have our 5 a day. We've got to have this and that. From an evolutionary standpoint, there are many, many races that have lived on meat, pretty much meat alone. People, the vegans keep trying to say that the Inuit didn't. They ate a load of plant matter, and they used to search through the intestines for digested plants, and they used to eat all these berries and seaweed and all that kind of thing. But actually, if you read the old books, like Stephenson's book, when he went and stayed with the Inuit, you read, and he had no agenda. He didn't. And they found that even scurvy was being cured by eating meat, and all the ship's captains used to know this. And then they say, the vegans say, oh, well, the Inuit were not very long-lived and they had heart disease and all that. They didn't have heart disease. They had some kind of thickening of the arteries. But this, in an osteoporosis, which is probably down to lack of sunlight. But, they say they had an average lifespan of like 40 years. Well, that's pretty damn good in the Arctic, to be honest. And the polar explorers, how long did they last on their rice and beans that they packed? About 2-3 months before they got scurvy. So I would say that they did pretty well in the Arctic, and then you get, everybody's obsessed with the Hadza tribe in Tanzania. My missus is from Tanzania, and so she's grown up with all these people, and it makes her laugh, some of these attitudes towards them, because everybody says, well, you've got to have your fiber, a diverse plant matter, and this is why the Hadza are so healthy, and everybody wants to go out there and get a fecal implant from the Hadza to get their gut biome. And nobody understands the gut biome, honestly. I mean, there are a load of experts out there on it, but nobody actually really knows what's going on. So they say the Hadza are really healthy because of their diverse microbiome. No, they have a diverse microbiome because they eat those diverse foods. They don't have any of our overt chronic diseases, but they're not such a magnificent race as, 100 miles away. There's a load of Maasai that are 7 foot tall and bringing lions down with their bare hands, and all they eat is blood, meat, and raw milk. And they have a much more simplified gut bacteria than the Hadza. So which one do you want to be? I don't really have, I spent years trying to rebuild the gut flora, all these protocols with everybody's having sauerkraut and prebiotics, probiotics, resistant starches, this and that, God, I just see all these things clear up when people cut the plants out. And then people say, oh, well, it's just covering up the issue. Well, in a way, yes, but in a way, no. You've probably just cut out the things that are just starvation foods. If we look at our history, people say, oh, we've always been vegetarian. Well, where are they talking about? Which part of the world? Matt's right. And Jack Cruz too, he says, if you live in the sun, you can eat shit off a shingle and you're going to be fine. But if you live in the north of England, you have these long winters and you're eating pineapples and mangoes all winter, you've got some kind of a disconnect there from your local environment. So you can go keto in the winter, and it's much more important than the summer. People feel better when they go on holiday eating the same crap. Why? Because they're in the sun. all these things tie in. There's no one answer. But if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective and from the perspective of latitude and circadian cycles and inflammatory history, then it starts to make sense. If you look in all the old texts, they were giving people bone broth. They were giving people meat. The real Ayurvedic doctors in India won't be saying, take this pill, take this herb. If you've got autoimmunity, they'll be saying, have a load of fatty meat, have brains, have connected tissue. Exactly what they're saying now at Paleomedicina in Hungary. I've got this retreat coming up. We're flying out in 2 days. And one of the speakers is Zofia Clements, and she runs Paleomedicina with Chaba Top. And these two are amazing. The results they're having, the way they're showing with PEG tests, that you can't really ever fix gut permeability until the very last of the plants have gone from the diet. And then they can see in tests that these proteins are not getting through into the bloodstream. And I think the science is catching up. I think slowly, and nobody's listening to it because it's not in anybody's financial interest to say just eat meat and fat. But I would say, look, I know I'm always rude about veganism, but it hurt me a lot, and it's killed a lot of my friends. I mean, literally, I live in an area which is now the Transcendental Meditation kind of center, and I don't have much to do with it anymore, but I have some old friends in that. They were all pretty vibrant, healthy people in the 80s when I moved here. But now they're just dropping like flies, and they're dying of cancer. And I lost 2 friends on the same day last year to cancer.
Wow. And
it's insane. This is just like a community of 500 people or something, so it's absolutely crazy that there's this much of an incidence of all these chronic diseases. They're either very emaciated or fat, one or the other, or they've got some kind of disease. They're pretty much all of them are limping, and or they got, the teeth are falling out. And this is very common on these plant-based diets. Weston Price noticed the health of teeth, when he went around in early last century and found in these indigenous tribes, the more sort of meat and fat they were eating and the fewer grains, the better their dental health was. And this is a very good marker of the rest of the health. The Inuit never had any cavities in their teeth. You can't find any in Inuit skulls. I've seen cavities heal up. People have had cavities actually heal up when they go on a carnivore diet. It does the most extraordinary things. The claims for it are ridiculous. And sometimes I have to pinch myself and I almost think, no, I shouldn't make these claims. But I'm seeing it every day because where I am with these big Facebook groups and whatever and consults, and I see the most extraordinary things. I used to work with people. I used to help them with this and that. They'd see this bit of an improvement. I used to be a trainer in the gym, and get them to grow big. And I never really knew how to get them lean because I thought it was a matter of calories in, calories out. But which it isn't. But
the amount of battles I have to have with people on Facebook, because I'm in Facebook groups too that I run on keto, and geez, it's frustrating when people still think that calories in versus calories out is a thing.
Yeah, I know, it's nuts. When I have a before and after picture, and I can say that in the before picture where I was really fat, I'm just sitting there at the drums with my daughter on my lap, and I was such a big fat bastard. And I thought when I lost the weight, and it took about a year, I thought, okay, let's take another one in exactly the same position with her on my lap, so it looks like it. The only difference was I'd cut my 4-foot dreadlocks off, and now I just sort of shaved off head. So I was eating like 2,500 calories maybe on the one on the left where I was fat, and probably 4,000 calories of meat and fat on the one on the right.
Absolutely.
And it's ridiculous what it can do. So yeah, there's all these misconceptions, but if you actually start to look into the science, you can start to see the work of people like Nina Teicholz and Ivor Cummins and whatever, where they're showing that the whole cholesterol theory was nonsense. We've based all our dietary recommendations on this, and it was a theory. It was never proved. It's the lipid hypothesis. It's a hypothesis. It's nonsense. And so why are we, the supermarkets are full of racks and racks of this is the healthy section, which is the section to run away from. It's the soy and low fat section. And absolutely insane. And, I don't know if you're aware of Tristan Haggard. I've come to know him pretty well, and Primal Edge Health on YouTube, but
okay, yeah.
He's hilarious. He's hilarious. And he gets into these sort of conspiracy theories, but I'm starting to agree with him that they're not theories. I cannot think of any reason why anybody intelligent in charge of food or whatever would really still believe that processed soy is somehow a way to get rid of our diseases.
It makes no sense.
It's insane. So, people worry. Then they say, oh, you're going to die. You're eating a steak and whatever, and covered in butter or whatever, like I used to when I had the butter, covered in tallow now. But, you're eating a load of fatty meat and nothing else. And they said that you can see them looking worried. And they're sitting there with a can of Pringles crisps and a Coca-Cola and a sandwich, and a load of fruit. And yet that's okay. Or even McDonald's. Nobody bats an eyelid if you go down McDonald's and eat. But if you eat steak every day, you're going to die from something. Your heart's going to blow up or something immediately. And we just have become so disconnected from our history. I believe we've always eaten like this. There's a researcher in Israel called Mickey Ben-Dor. He's got some nice interviews online. He's done some, I think, for Sean Baker's Human Performance Outliers podcast and whatever. I did one for that too. I felt kind of a bit daft in the company of all these amazing scientists and docs that he's had on, but we all have our own story. But Mickey Ben-Dor has been doing all this kind of research, and he's been showing really from the isotopes and bone records and whatever, you can pretty much see what ratio of fat, protein, and carbs a human was eating. And it seems very likely that we, whenever we could, survived off mammoths and aurochs and stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And nearer the coast, we'd have survived on seafood as well. But this is what we ate. There was nobody running around with placards going "meat is murder." It wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. We weren't brainwashed into that. So we ate that when it was available, and we ate the other stuff when we couldn't get the meat. And I believe that's how it is, because that's how it seems to affect disease. We didn't get the chronic diseases back then because we never pushed ourselves far enough with the donuts and the Twinkie bars and the cereal and all that crap. We never pushed ourselves so far that we got so sick, that we got so sensitive to it. But, once you are that sick, don't worry, there is a way out. You can eat meat and fat and you'll be blown away. Try it for 30 days and then try reintroducing things. That's all I say, and you'll never think about diet the same again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of the listeners that listen to my podcast anyway, know how much I talk about the importance of just eating whole foods, regardless of whatever diet you want to eat. It needs to be whole foods. We obviously know that we can't be eating processed, refined, and fast foods. That's a given. But it's a little different to hear that, now it's whole foods, but just animals, just animals and fish, no plants. What is it about plants that most of the scientists or you believe can cause issues in humans? Or is do you think that it's causing issues in a healthy person? Or is it just that if you have, if you've gotten to a point where you have arthritis or you have, certain conditions, then carnivore makes sense? Or is it that you find that plants are actually causing issues?
Well, one of the things that amazed me back in the early days when I had this Facebook group, mm-hmm. I just got asked at the end of 2017, December, I think, to start it for about 10 friends who knew that I was doing carnivore. And I said, yeah, we'll start a little group up and I'll help you out with it. And there's like 10,000 people now. I had absolutely no idea it would ever do that. Mm. But I've seen a lot of this, which is great. What is even more impressive to me than the people who are sick and get this healing is when you get like one of their partners who says, oh, well, I don't want to do it. I don't need to do it. I'm perfectly healthy, but I'll have a go, just to support them. And then you get these amazing stories of my brain fog's gone. I have stable energy during the day. My digestion sorted itself out. I'm not constipated, or I don't have the runs or whatever. The last of the belly fat's gone. I've got no bloating. All of these little things where these little non-issues that they thought were just a part of aging, something to just, that's inevitable. And they were disappearing. I was starting to get these long stories from people who said, I don't need this because I'm healthy. So I believe it's very beneficial. Now, does everybody need to do it? Well, no, because, number one, the controversial thing, some people just have to get ill so, go ahead eating all the cereals and stuff, because quite honestly, it was the best thing that happened to me. So maybe that's part of their journey. Mm-hmm. But what's the problem with vegetables? Well, which vegetables we're talking about, really, because most of the vegetables we eat, they just didn't exist in nature. Everybody thinks, isn't this all natural and stuff? Oh, I'm eating broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and all that sort of thing. This is incredibly healthy. Well, they don't really exist in nature. You know, oh, bananas. I'm going to have some cereal in the morning with some low-fat milk with a banana chopped up on it. You know, this is just a carb fest. And this is something they're doing in the winter before they go to a blue-lit gym at 6 o'clock in the morning to pound away on a treadmill, you know. And this is what's called a healthy lifestyle. And it's insane. So, you know, apart from the fact that you've got the circadian disconnect with all that stuff, let's take a banana. I mean, if you see a wild banana, it's a small affair that isn't particularly sweet, and it's all full of seeds, and nobody would buy it. So these are all these things that we've sort of crossbred or genetically engineered or whatever from other sort of brassica plants or whatever they're called. And so we've come up with these awful thyroid disruptors called, you know, cauliflower and broccoli. And people think that they're really healthy. Now, if somebody grows up doing all the right things, emotionally balanced, out in the sun, eating meat, fat, and a load of vegetables and seasonal fruit, are they going to get sick? No. And they're going to think you're mad. But when you become that sensitive, you start to notice the actual effects of what is wrong with these vegetables. They don't have the available nutrients that we think they do. It's all wrapped up in this cellulose. They're not bioavailable as they are in animal products. They're full of all kinds of toxins, you know, because that's how plants defend themselves. If you want to look deeper into that, I'm not a great expert on it, but if you have a look at the work of Georgia Ede, or my good friend Elliot Overton in England, he's done some great interviews. He did one with Bart Kay on oxalates that everybody should have a listen to. You should get Elliot on. He's very cool.
Okay.
But he'll go deep into that. But there's, you know, oxalates, salicylates, and when you can see what an oxalate is, and that it's like having needles all through the tissues in your body and binding together and creating kidney stones, settling in joints and creating gout, which is blamed on meat. I wonder if it's blamed on meat just because a lot of people get that straight afterwards of going carnivore because, well, it's always been blamed on it really, or drink and fatty meat. But if they're going predominantly onto that, then they'll get an oxalate dump. And so the body will start dumping oxalates. It's not the fault of the meat. You know, I got kidney stones because of an oxalate dump. I didn't get it because I was eating meat. The meat allowed the body to release this stuff. But unfortunately, there was such a buildup that I got kidney stones. So, you know, we've always been told that fiber is healthy as well. So apart from all the toxins, all the lectins and salicylates, oxalates, and tons of other ones that I can't remember because I'm just a drummer, we have all these. We have the fiber. You know, we have the fiber in there that everybody says is great. Now, I think if everybody thinks fiber is great, you should look at one study that's. You know, everybody loves studies, don't they? I don't. I think they're ridiculous, most of them. But there's one done on it, so you can look it up on PubMed, and it's stopping or reducing dietary fiber reduces constipation or something. So everybody's told to go regularly. We need fiber. Well, it depends how regularly. You know, 10 times a day was a bit too much for me as a vegan. I got sick of it. You know, it was just my arse exploding all the time, and I was absolutely fed up with it. So now my digestion is absolutely perfect. I don't have a hint of constipation. I don't get the runs. I don't get anything. You know, in the adaptation phase, you can get a bit of the runs, you know, as the gut flora rebalances doing whatever it is that we don't understand it does. But after a while, you know, people notice that even if they haven't gone for much longer than they used to, they don't have any bloating, no discomfort. The meat gets so thoroughly digested so easily. Just the opposite of what your plant-based people say, that it not so much comes out. So the constipation they found, in this study, they put 64 people, I think, who had terrible digestive issues and constipation. They took all the fiber out of their diet, or at least most of the fiber, and they improved according to how much of the fiber they took out of the diet. You know, and it worked for everybody. It wasn't just like, oh, look, there's 2 or 3 people. If you took the fiber out, they actually weren't constipated anymore. Isn't that weird? No, it was the whole lot. And so that never happens in a study. And at the end, the conclusion was we need to really reevaluate the role of dietary fiber. And this was from the World Journal of Gastroenterology.
Wow.
And I've since met a gastroenterologist who I took my mum in. My mum, she died last year from pneumonia. second bout of pneumonia, but she was 93. And a couple of years before, we reversed her breast cancer on a carnivore diet. There's a video of mine on YouTube. You can actually see the photographic evidence. Thanks, Mum, for being brave enough for letting me put pictures of your norks on YouTube. But there they are. But there's this nasty looking tumor, and you can see it reversing. And this was on a carnivore diet and a $5 bottle of Lugol's iodine. You know, this is very useful for breast tissue. And there's people dying of this. I don't understand why. You know, if it's a hormonally driven tumor. But anyway, I'm digressing.
Mm.
So she had a load of reflux. So I took her to the gastroenterologist, you know, and they did this test. I thought she's not going to put up with a camera down there. I had a camera down there. They said I had hiatus hernia, and I knew how horrible it was having a camera down your throat, and I didn't want to subject her to that. I don't have any problem with hiatus hernia anymore. They say that's another thing that's never going to go away. You know, I don't have any indigestion. I used to live on Rennies, or, you know, Tums, as they call them in the States. I think it's proton pump inhibitors, all that crap. Nothing like that anymore. But, you know, she was getting this terrible reflux, and so she had this barium swallow thing, and so they said, yeah, the same old thing, it's hiatus hernia, blah, blah. So I said to this guy, how about we put her on a really high-fat, really low-carbohydrate, pretty much carnivore diet? This is how I fixed all my digestive issues. This is how I fixed my autoimmunity. So, well, you know, I expected him to have a go at me. Most doctors are very closed about this, particularly gastroenterologists. They don't want to know about that. And this was a kind of a pretty renowned guy who was, you know, a bit of a stickler. You know, had a bit of a reputation, this dude. I thought, I'm going to run into him one day. I know I am. So anyway, there I was in front of him with my mum. My mum, your kid's always a lunatic, you know. So my mum kind of interrupted and said, so what are you going to do about it to the doc? And the doc looked at me and he said, looked at her and he said, do what your son says. If you do what he says, you won't need us at all. And I mean, my jaw hit the floor, and so did hers, and she started listening. And we got her onto a carnivore diet with, you know, a few berries and some honey and some Greek yogurt now and again, because she has a sweet tooth, and, you know, yeah, like a lifetime of that without the interest in diet. It was a bit much to put her straight onto fully carnivore.
Yeah.
But 95% of what she was eating was animal products and fats, and it all went away. You know, no trouble with it ever again. And
wow.
You see it happening again and again, and the occasional doc here and there is waking up to it. And when they do, they shout about it louder than me. You know, you can see the Ted Naimans and, you know, Sean Baker, of course, shouting about the carnivory. And there's a lot of docs out there now. Paul Saladino, he's coming up with some incredible science about exactly why it's fine and how all these studies have been misinterpreted. You know, people say, for example, meat's carcinogenic, but when you look at it, these studies were done on, you know, McDonald's eaters who also smoke and drink and do whatever else that they do. And they're eating the bun with this awful meat from McDonald's. So that they're eating the bun and they're eating all the fries and they're having a double Coke with it. And then they're having ice cream afterwards and then going for a donut or something, you know. And so they say the meat's caused the cancer. How have they possibly been able to do this? You know, and if you look into it, you know, the World Health Organization recently, they came up with this thing that meat is carcinogenic. Red meat is a suspected carcinogenic or whatever. And processed meat is as bad as cigarettes or something. You know, I mean, where did they get this from? If you look at it into it a bit more deeply, you find that most of the people on the committee were vegetarian or vegan. And they were cherry picking these epidemiological studies that are really just collections of anecdotes. People who can't remember what the hell they ate, and they get given a form to try and remember what they ate. And then they put it all together and they go, this is a serious study. Whereas the tens of thousands of people who are now recovering on low carb diets and carnivory, oh, this is just anecdotes. No, it's not. The plural of anecdotes is data. Yeah. And we're getting much better data from these proper people who are really interested in it and who have healed, as opposed to some dude who's not interested in diet, who gets given a form to say how many McDonald's he's eaten in the past year, you know, and he doesn't even know, and he's probably lies about it and whatever. So they say the people who eat more vegetables are more healthy. So this was pushed through by the people on the committee. Whereas if you look, there's a couple of people off that committee who are now saying it was one of the most frustrating, embarrassing times of their life, particularly this guy called David Klurfeld. And he's doing interviews now, and he's saying it's nonsense. What this committee put out that I was on is absolute nonsense. The evidence isn't there. Go and eat loads of red meat. It's really fine. He's not a carnivore, but he eats a load of red meat, and he's aware of carbs and, you know, brings them down as far as I remember. But he's not fully carnivore. But he recommends to everybody to eat red meat, and he was on that committee. And you can see how these things get twisted around. The data was never really there. And if you start to listen to the people who've really looked at the studies, not your sort of Michael Greger or whatever, who's picked a couple of studies that agree with him and put it up as big science on his website, and everybody believes him, and fail to realize that you know, all you got to do is look at that picture of Michael Greger sitting next to that 9-year-old girl, and she's got bigger arms than him. And you think, hang on, you know, there's a little bit of sarcopenia going on here. And this is the guy who's written a book called How Not to Die. How not to die what? How not to die of natural causes? How to die of veganism? I don't know. You know, I have a pop at vegans, but I'd spend a lot of time, most of my time, is spent helping out vegans who are very damaged. And most carnivores are ex-vegans because we've been through everything. This isn't a diet that you pick up on as your first choice. You don't go, oh, I'm just going to go carnivore because it's fine. You have to have failed in every single other diet to get to carnivore. And so that's why. So most of us have been vegan, you know, and you can see how the agenda's pushed through. Nobody's tried it. As you said, the only people who think this is insane are the people who've never tried it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and this, I don't know exactly where I got this from. I was watching a show on, I think it was on like the evolution of humans. This is going to be very broad because I don't actually remember what it was called. But anyway, it talked about how when we figured out how to make fire, it allowed us to cook meat. And this is like one of the big changes in our evolution. One of the big, like, you know, one of the big things that I think helped our brain, it was either grow or just kind of change to bring us to where we're at now. Have you heard of this? Am I way off? I just briefly remember it from a show, but it's just kind of popped in since we started talking carnivore.
Well, I've heard about it, you know, but who really knows what happened back then? I don't know. I've heard this, that we owe our big brains to saturated fat. And I do know that there are studies that show that when you go plant-based, your brain shrinks. And there is a certain look that long-term vegetarians and vegans tend to get, that kind of sunken eye thing. And I hear that's, you know, due to sort of brain shrinkage and the eyes going back. If that's true, I don't know. You know, I'm terribly sorry to all these vegetarians out there. You know, I can get away with it with these little digs because I was veggie for 30 years, you know. So I know that I know what it does, and I kind of say it jokingly, but I know that there's a lot of damage being done out there with it. So yeah, you can see brain functioning coming back like I did, you know, from veganism to eating a load of fish. And you can feel it coming back. It is something bad that has that much of an immediate, dramatic change to health like nothing else I've found. How can it suddenly be bad? Yeah. So yeah, I believe that our brains totally thrive. I mean, they're pretty much made of saturated fat, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You know, and they've got cholesterol. They've got, you know, cholesterol's been demonized, and like Ivor Cummins says that I think it's him who says that cholesterol is like the paramedics at a road accident. You know, it didn't cause the road accident. It's they're there to mop up the problem afterwards.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, we have all this thing about cholesterol and how dangerous it is, but I think anybody who's looked into it now knows that dietary cholesterol does not translate into arterial problems. You know, it's a different thing. It's the cholesterol that's made in the liver that ends up in the arteries for a very good reason. And then all we do is try and strip it out with statins. And studies actually show that people with lower cholesterol have more heart attacks. And when they do have a heart attack, they fail to survive it more often than people with high cholesterol, which seems to be really protective. So we've got the cholesterol thing completely upside down. The cholesterol markers do mean something, but they don't mean what that we think they mean.
No, yeah, absolutely. Speaking of markers, I mean, one of the things that most people talk about the moment they hear carnivore diet is, well, if you're not eating plants, where are you getting your vitamins and minerals from? I mean, to me, red meat is one of the most nutritious foods you can possibly eat. But can you kind of talk a little bit about that, where we're getting most of our vitamins and minerals? Are we missing any when we're eating just carnivore? Do you need a supplement to get anything in, or are we good to go just eating meat and fish?
Well, again, I'm going to have to pull the drummer card on that and say that the science always goes over my head. I've listened to it a million times, but I can go into it a little bit. But if anybody really wants to go into that, and you maybe get him on too, it's a guy called Frank Tufano. He's a young guy on YouTube. And he goes into all the absolute ins and outs of the micro and macronutrients, and so does Paul Saladino. They're brilliant. But just briefly, let's just take vitamin C, because this is the big one that everybody's always worried about. Where do you get your vitamin C? Well, why does nobody ever get scurvy on a carnivore diet? I think it's two things. The body needs a load more vitamin C when we have plants, because carbohydrates, as far as I understand, compete for the same pathways. Now, give me a slap, somebody who's listening, if I might have got this kind of wrong, but I do know that without carbohydrates, your need for vitamin C is very, very much lower. And some people say you get none, but yes, there is some in red meat, and you do get it in organ meats and whatever, but you don't need anywhere near as much as they say. All these recommended daily allowances were made up for people who eat a load of carbs,
Interesting.
As were the blood markers, because blood markers change on carnivore diet. And depending on what you're doing, depending on whether you're doing a lot of exercise. It's like Sean Baker had his blood results done, and then the vegans are all saying, well, you're diabetic, you're going to die. And meanwhile, he's breaking world records at over 50 years old, in Concept 2 rowing and deadlifting and Highland Games and whatever it is he does. But they say he's a death's door diabetic because his blood glucose was high. But this means nothing if you look until you look at inflammatory markers and insulin. So his insulin was very low. So obviously he's very insulin sensitive. His glucose was high. Why? He probably trained that morning and there was a load of gluconeogenesis going on in the liver, and something like that was happening. It seems to be quite common among athletes that they have higher glucose when they go very, very low carb. But there's no inflammatory markers. There's no disruption of insulin sensitivity. So it really isn't we're breaking frontiers here in a way. It's like when the vegans were crying out for my blood results, saying, oh, you're going to die like Sean Baker. And, I'm coming up 57 now. And so the local doctor, he keeps on sending me all these things. Oh, you need a blood test and you need your wellness check and all this crap. It's just statin marketing board, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah. Oh, look, he's an old dude. We can get him on statins. So I went down there and I thought, I'm not worried about anything, but I have to admit, yeah, okay, I do have some plant matter. I have some red wine, but I had such a bad liver that was so full up and clogged and had cysts in it when I was vegetarian and teetotal all my life, pretty much, because I couldn't touch alcohol. My liver wouldn't process it. Then when my liver cleared out, probably with a load of the liver flushes and stuff, but also with this carnivory and not eating any more carbs, and the fact that the cysts even disappeared, my liver's been really, really good. I think this is the reason why this is my new toy. I can experiment with wine and stuff. I won't touch anything grain-based. But, some tequila, some wine, something like that. And it's fun. And I thought, wow, I wonder if that's shown up on my liver results. Oh, God, because I never drank before. And they used to ask me if I was a heavy drinker. So I went to have the tests and everything's great in all the lipid panels except LDL's up a bit. And I said, excellent. That's where it should be. HDL and triglycerides, like 1-to-1 or whatever, they look really good. LDL up a bit. And I thought, yeah, that's what you expect on a keto diet. But when you understand LDL and the particle sizes and blah, blah, it's not the bad cholesterol we think it is. I said to the nurse, I said, well, that's where it should be on a high-fat, low-carb diet. And she said, yeah, it's just a con to sell statins. And I thought, yay! They're waking up now. They're waking up too. And then I said, yeah, but what about the liver results? Come on, what about the liver results? And she looked at them, she went, absolutely perfect. I thought, you're joking. You know, that's even with drinking the wine.
Wow.
But anyway, so I digressed from the from the vitamins and stuff. But I mean, it kind of ties in with the blood markers. So I don't see any deficiencies in anything. I don't see anything going wrong with blood work. And I don't with carnivores, you know, who are always posting blood work, perfect blood work, apart from LDL that's up a bit. But that just shows to me we've got LDL wrong. If they're curing all these diseases and they feel fantastic and everything else is in order and the other blood panel looks great, you know, why are we worried about the LDL up a bit? Obviously, that's where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's all we're seeing. No symptoms from it, nothing like that. So are we lacking in anything? Well, no, we're not. We get everything we need. And here's a really interesting thing. I don't know whether you know about this particular study, but this fascinates people. There was one done on people who, they wanted to find out how much our zinc levels went up when we ate oysters, because oysters are full of zinc. So they gave like 3 sets of people oysters. Right? First set of people just oysters, and their zinc levels shot up. They gave the second set of people oysters and black beans, and the zinc only went up like half as much as it did in the first group. And then they gave somebody, the rest of them, like oysters and a load of tortillas or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the zinc levels didn't change at all. So it just shows that when you have a recommended daily allowance of something, you're dealing with people who are eating pizza and pasta and cereals and bread all the time. So this is acting as an anti-nutrient and is blocking the uptake of all of these great nutrients. So the fact that there isn't as much of certain things like vitamin C and meat doesn't mean to say we need a whole load more. It means to say that it's much more bioavailable and there's not the anti-nutrients to stop us absorbing it. And so we're absolutely fine. Nobody's getting these deficiencies. It's a bit scary to start with because you go, oh, we need this, we need that, out of broccoli or this or that, or this fruit that we've flown in from the opposite side of the world that we'd never have found here at this time of year. You know, why do we need mango in England? Why are raspberries essential in December, you know, for your polyphenols and your vitamin C? They're just not. You know, people like me who are going on for years eating no plants and nothing's ever going wrong. I'm not seeing things going wrong. I'm just not, you know. I see people having difficulty in the adaptation phase. Mm-hmm. There's many different things that can happen. You know, you can get electrolyte issues and you have to up your sodium, sometimes magnesium. But all these things you can get past, you can get by, you know.
And these happen in those who are going keto that are eating plants anyway.
Yeah, sure. It's just a matter of, you know, how the kidneys tend to rebalance and excrete whatever. But over the long term, I'm just not seeing anything. I'm just seeing improved health. And people go, isn't it boring? Isn't it boring? Oh God, I could never eat just meat. Well, okay, maybe not as you think about it now. But after a while, your tastes refine and you notice a huge difference between beef and lamb, or even different cuts of beef. Or, oh, today's a day where I need some fish. I need some oysters, you know, some liver might go down nicely today. You know, I don't even like it, but my body tells me it needs it sometimes. And when you've given your body just that, it can actually hear above the noise of all this 5 a day churning around in your stomach, vegetables and fruit. It can hear above all that noise, you know, and it just sorts itself out and starts to desire the right thing. So after 30 to 90 days, you find that your tastes refine. You stop craving these kinds of things. You know, I mean, God, is anybody ever completely immune to chocolate? I don't know. You know, I might have the occasional bit of dark chocolate, very, very occasionally, as long as it's got no soy in it or anything. But that's it really. Apart from that, you know, I kind of miss potatoes, I guess, because they were great mashed up with butter. But I always had them 50-50 with butter. On their own, I wouldn't have eaten them. But, you know, a roast potato or something 50-50 with, and again, it's our ancestral heritage coming through. We used to eat tubers. We used to eat that kind of thing, and we would eat berries in season and whatever, but we didn't have the grains. We didn't have all the things that really break us up badly. And you see, one thing that puzzles me when you see there's like a vegan YouTuber called Goji Man, and he's always trying to fix people who say, I can't be vegan anymore. And let's do this protocol. Send me your stool sample. I mean, his house must be full of other people's poo. It's unbelievable, you know. I'd hate to think what his wife thinks. Maybe it doesn't even come to him, but I have this vision of his house being full of poo. But you know, he does these stool tests and he says, right, you've got this imbalance. What you need to do is this protocol and that one, and then you need to reduce oxalates with it. Well, if you know people have got a problem with oxalates, why eat them in the first place? You know why? Or take it off for 30 days and then you'll be able to eat this healthy food that's stuffed full of oxalates and salicylates again that gave you your kidney stones. You know, it seems to be a long way around. Now, a lot of people this might fool, but I've tried it. I've tried every protocol. No, I didn't do veganism wrong. I understand it better than most vegans. I can put together a plant-based diet. I know exactly what to put with what. I know exactly how to do it. Studied it for years. Doesn't work. I see these people trying to fix the gut by doing this complicated thing, introducing this probiotic, that one. What people find when they drop the last of the veg out, they don't need probiotics anymore. You don't need sauerkraut. You don't need kimchi. You don't need kombucha. You find that I get the feeling that fermented veg is mostly for mopping up the damage done by the non-fermented veg. You know, there's a you know, that's a bit confrontational, that one. But I because carnivores come back with the same story. I used to have a fridge full of sauerkraut. I don't want it anymore. I don't need it. I have no need for it. My digestion is perfect. And my symptoms have cleared up.
I love
so why would you need it?
It tastes amazing.
yeah, I heard in one of your other, you put it with your eggs or something.
Yeah, I do put it on.
Yeah, I just say a lot of your podcasts are fresh in my mind. But yeah, so did I. I ate it like crazy up until about 4 years ago when I was on keto. Listen, somebody started up like mowing their lawn or something out here. Can you hear it? Is it mucking about the sound?
No, I can't hear it at all.
Oh, that's excellent. Cool. No, there's, I used to have it all the time. You know, and I had my favorite sauerkrauts and kimchis and all of this sort of thing. And I didn't really like them. They were all right. You know, they were quite interesting for a couple of bites. But I started to think, if you get cholera, right, you only need a couple of these bacteria or whatever, and then you've got cholera. Surely, if these were really establishing themselves in the gut, these bacteria that are supposed to be good, you wouldn't need sauerkraut every day. You'd need one hit of it, and then you'd be done. If you're feeding them the right things, the bacteria. But you see, there's a load of bacteria in there, a load of different bacteria. We don't understand much about the gut, and so I'm not going to go much into it, or the gut, or the microbiome, or whatever. And I think people who really go on about it and lecture about it, they all seem to disagree anyway, these experts. Yeah. So I don't think it's such a new science that nobody understands it. It's like, oh, microbiome this and bacteria that. It's pretty much nonsense. But one thing that is very associated with arthritic conditions and ankylosing spondylitis, you know, where the spine fuses up and gets very inflamed, is a bacteria called Klebsiella. And it's been shown that this bacteria gets nicely fed and activated when those carbs or whatever are carried down further into the gut where they live by all these carbs wrapped up in cellulose. I remember back into my early days of trying to heal this on a plant-based diet, and I could eat a whole great big bar of dark chocolate, nothing would happen. Or even sugary chocolate, nothing would happen at all. But if I ate some vegetables, I'd start to get symptoms. I thought, why is this? This is crazy, because the vegetables are so healthy and the chocolate isn't. But actually, that makes sense with the Klebsiella thing, because, you know, simple sugars are broken down higher up in the digestive tract and they don't trigger that Klebsiella thing. So it's the starch. You know, I say to people with autoimmunity, it isn't so much the sugars and the carbs as such. It's the starch that's going to hurt you an awful lot more. The vegetables are hurting you more than the sugars. And people just don't believe that. That just blows their minds. You know, to a diabetic, that's not true. You know, diabetes is a pretty basic illness. I don't know why we even still treat it in hospitals. It clears up so fast on a keto diet or a carnivore diet that it's just a joke illness almost. Type 2, that is, you know. But even there's been results with type 1. But you know, if you're seeing, if it's that easy, autoimmunity isn't quite so easy. It's a little bit more complicated to unwind it, and you know, it has certain different rules. But the whole low carb area is the way to go.
Definitely.
But you know, you have to go a little bit further. And those starchy vegetables that are so incredibly healthy in the keto community, actually, I just don't think they are. You know, if you like them, and you just by all means go ahead and eat them. You know, we're not vegans. We're not militant. I think everybody should eat exactly what they want to eat. If they want to eat, you know, if they want to eat donuts all day, absolutely go ahead, enjoy yourself. But once you get sick, if anybody has the confidence to try a real high-fat carnivore diet and start to listen to the carnivore podcasts and people who are really on the cutting edge of this, you will get confidence. Join the groups. You'll see the stuff that's just will blow you away. So, and there we are, yeah.
With the carnivore diet, is there any specific rules? Do you have to eat certain foods like every once in a while? Do you have to eat, you know, is there any specifics to it, or is it just eat meat, eat fish, that's it?
You know, the more I study, the more I realize I don't know. And the more people start to make up rules about things, the more I realize that they're probably rubbish. Because everybody does have different reactions to different things. You know, people use that as an excuse to say everything in moderation and eat a balanced diet, which are probably the two most annoying expressions on the planet, I think, that have led us into all sorts of trouble. Because, you know, everything in moderation. That would just give you moderate results. If you've got an extreme disease, the last thing you need is moderation. You know, a balanced diet, balanced what? You mean balance between actual food items like, you know, some good plants and animals, balanced with a load of grains that were, you know, cereals and stuff that are touted as healthy, that were actually invented by the Seventh-day Adventists to stop people masturbating. Let's reduce sexual desire.
Hold on.
You know?
Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. Let's dive into that. Where did all this stuff come from? Right. There was a guy, oh God, why have I forgotten his name? I'm going to be kicking myself after this. I've never forgotten his name. Maybe it'll pop into my head.
Yeah.
But it was a film with Anthony Hopkins, you know, who did Silence of the Lambs and stuff. And he's this particular guy in the film. And he had this like sanitarium where he used to take people in and feed them all these grains. And it was the Seventh-day Adventists. And they started saying, oh, grains are healthy and you've got to eat them for health, and animal products are horrendous. So I'm getting boiling hot. The sun's coming straight through this window and it's like baking in here. So you're in Bali there in England. It's the first warm day we've had and I'm in a greenhouse. Yeah, this is best light up here in the house, but my God, it's boiling up in this attic room. Yeah, so, you know, he was saying that all of these animal products enrage sexual desire, and this is at the root of all evil. You know, he's very religious, the Seventh-day Adventist thing. God, what was his name? Why have I forgotten his name? What's it called? Anyway, but he did it to basically stop people wanking.
Wow.
You know, let's stop this. And so if it's disrupting your hormones that much, and now there it is in the supermarket, labeled as the sunshine breakfast. You know, I mean, come on, it's crazy. This is nothing like we ever ate. These sort of chippings off the floor of some grain factory, you know, mixed with some pasteurized low-fat milk. Anyway, yeah. So I digressed on that, but that's where it came from. Yeah, to reduce sexual desire. That's why we started eating all these grains and things. So what were we on before that? Sorry, I brought that up. And then
I've never heard of that before, first of all, but we were just talking about...
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny, that one, yeah.
Rules of carnivore diet. Or if someone... Let's just go with this. If someone wanted to start the carnivore diet, what do? Just start eating meat? Nothing else?
Yeah. I mean, the traditional thing that everybody says is beef and water. Beef and water for 30 days. You know, take it back to a complete reset and then see where you are and reintroduce stuff after that. See what happens. Then you'll have a kind of baseline, you know, for what it is. Ruminant animals, fatty ruminant animals, they seem to be the least inflammatory along with fish. You know, even egg yolks can trigger some people at the start. It depends how sick you are. Again, the thing is, what I'm really into is developing people's intuition, not telling them what to eat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if we understood that probably the least inflammatory food that we could possibly eat is ruminant animals and the fat from ruminant animals and salt. If you go back to that and get a real marker, then you tell me, you know, you introduce other things. Introduce some chicken for a week, see what happens. If you get a bit of inflammation, if your digestion doesn't feel so good, if your brain's not working so well, take it out again. The next week, put some pork in. Next week, put some egg yolks in. The next week, put some butter in. And that's the kind of order of what I find are the least inflammatory things. And then you can start introducing some vegetables and stuff. But it's funny because I've seen so many people at the beginning of it go, I can't wait to reintroduce some nice veg. Oh, I miss a salad. Then after 30 days or 90 days or whatever, if they push it, I see mostly sick people and I try and get them to go for longer than 30 days. And then they go, oh, I had a salad and I was so bloated. God, I never realized what it did to me. I'm not eating that again. I didn't even really like it. After 90 days of eating all this amazing fatty meat, and I get this pile of leaves, I wondered why I ever thought that it was really nice, you know. So people tend to kind of reintroduce and then chuck them out again. Some people bring them back in if they like them, and if they're okay with them, that's great. So you see, I don't like rules in anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to say there is probably a baseline, a reset diet. And after trying everything under the sun for a decade now, and some things really hurt that were supposed to cure you, you know, and I studied it. I mean, big time, and went for everything. And I know a lot of other people who haven't. The most knowledgeable people on diet who I've found are in the carnivore world because they've tried everything. This is the last resort. This is the last stop for most people.
Mm-hmm.
The people who actually give up on it are quite often people who try it and they get great results, but then they kind of drift back because they haven't been through everything else. So they think, oh, maybe I'll be all right on paleo. So they try that for 6 months. Their symptoms come back. And they go, all right, well, I better get back carnivore again. And then they do it and they go, oh, well, maybe keto's all right. Maybe I should have a bit of avocado. Maybe I should, you know, this is what our conditioning says. Oh, I haven't had an avocado for 6 months. I need one. Okay, I live in the north of England. Up until 100 years ago, maybe less, whoever ate a fucking avocado in the winter? You know, where the hell did they find one? Why did they need one? It's bullshit. So
that's why I love living in Bali. I get to just eat whatever I want. Everything's growing.
Yeah. Well, you can. I mean, you're young, you're healthy, you're in the sun. Yeah. You know, you're out there surfing and stuff. I mean, great. You'll probably get away with it for a hell of a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But once something's broken, and it tends to break quicker in northern climes, without the sun, then this is the way to go. But also, I think, as you can see from the Maasai, it's not just populations who live in the north who eat predominantly meat. It's fine at the equator. If you want to eat just meat at the equator, you're going to be fine as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you absolutely have to eat the plants. You see, berries. Okay, let's take probably the nicest fruit off the bush that you might find as you're wandering around in the average terrain. Let's not take the tropical ones, but, you know, here, seasonally, blackberries, whatever. You're going to find them. They're going to be really nice. You're going to eat them. Then they're gone. Nature's gone. Takes them away from you. They're not available year round. Are they of any use to us? You know, some people say you need it for the polyphenols. Jack's mentioned maybe for circadian signaling from the time of year. Certain things from polyphenols. You know, fortunately, Malbec wine's got some of that in as well.
Mm-hmm.
But do we need them? No, I believe it was for the benefit of the plants. Because we walked around and we just dumped on the ground and, you know, we'd spread the seeds. The seeds are not digestible. They'd come out the other end. Animals spread seeds, and that's how the plants and the trees spread, you know, and reproduce. So is that relevant now? Most people have got a toilet.
Mm.
You know, you're not going to grow much in your toilet. You're not going to grow any apple trees or anything. So I don't think fruit has much use to us. I don't think it does any harm. If you eat it seasonally or if you're in the sun. And you see, there's this great theory recently, and it's been blowing me away a lot, is this whole business of deuterium. And I expect Matt might have mentioned this to you.
He's mentioned it to me, yeah.
Yeah. Well, very short for your listeners, deuterium is an extra isotope of hydrogen. It creates a sort of heavy water that the cells find difficult to use, and it clogs up the cells, and the mitochondria don't work so well. And when you actually look at this, it tends to, correlation doesn't imply causation, but it seems very likely with this that there's something there with this deuterium business, because what depletes deuterium? Sunlight. It helps the cell to get rid of deuterium. Eating saturated fat makes the cell make its own deuterium depleted water, so that the autophagy and apoptosis is more efficient. These cells can regenerate better. They can mop up cancer cells. They can detox in their own way, not like having a green smoothie. But all these high deuterium foods coincidentally all grow in areas where there's a lot of sun, which depletes the deuterium. So, if you're eating fruit and you're out in the sun all day, you're going to be depleting deuterium faster than you're building it up. But if you're eating a banana in the winter in a high-rise block of apartments in Manchester, you're going to be in a bit of a deuterium soup. And artificial light stops you depleting deuterium. Cellular stuff stops you depleting deuterium. Jack had a good thing a while ago with his Factor X, where why did our grandparents stay healthy on all these grains? Well, my grandmother ate bread every day and she lived to 99. Fantastic. But she grew up in a time where there wasn't so much artificial light, particularly these fluorescents, the LEDs. There was no mobile phone masts, particularly 5G, that I believe is going to be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
All of this coming in. And so now we have to be a bit stricter with everything we do to keep ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And that's why now a carnivore diet is pretty, it might well have always been the optimal human diet. It's our preferred food. Do you want to grub around all day long every day for nuts and berries? Or do you want to cut the Achilles tendons of a mammoth and bring it down with a spear? They're not actually that difficult to kill. They're not animals that even ran away. An elephant won't run away from a human. It'll just face it. If you've got a couple of guys who know what they're doing, you can take it down with a spear. And that's what they did. So what are they going to do? They're going to eat these animals.
Way more badass than picking some berries too.
I know, it does, doesn't it? And that's why there weren't these berry foraging trips on the cave paintings. That's why there was the hunting trips on the cave paintings. It was the most enjoyable and the most nutritious thing they ever did.
Yeah, I love it.
So anyway, yeah, they've done this, and they've collected all their mammoth meat, and it's going to feed the tribe for a hell of a long time. And it didn't even matter. They probably had ways of preserving it, and they had ways of, with salt and putting it underwater, and they did all kinds of things. But I mean, there's people now eating a high meat, which is the last frontier, really. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to try it. Tristan's been trying to talk me into it. People are eating rotten liver and they're fermenting it in the fridge, and they're getting great results from it. And a lot of people are eating raw meat as well. People are going to great extremes with this carnivore diet, if you can call it extremes. Again, probably just basics. Let's say basics. You kill an animal, you eat it. If you're starving, you're going to do that. We've got used to fire. We've got used to nice fried up ribeye steaks, but actually that's probably not how we ate through most of our history. And you can see people eating the organs straight out of the freshly killed animal, and they'll eat the liver, and then they'll carry some other stuff back home. And this is what we always did. This bizarre idea that the vegans have, that we thrived on plants and nuts and berries, and I mean, I always think, well, let's get a vegan and send them on a quinoa hunt in up above the Arctic Circle. How much are they going to find to eat? It's not going to happen. So what have we eaten in the winter? What have we eaten? We did not survive on plants. It's just 2 seconds thinking about it. We know that that's nonsense. So yeah, they ate this fatty meat, and they didn't grub around for the berries. I believe the other stuff is basically starvation food. So presuming it is probably our optimal diet. Do we all need to do it? No, but if you're sick, you need to take all the pressure off the body you possibly can. You need to get your blue blocking glasses on. You need to get in some cold baths. You need to get out in the sun. You need to do all of these things. Fix your emotions, all of these things at once. And that is the blessing of illness, because it forces you into that. Otherwise, you just get so complacent. You go, one more all I can eat buffet down at Pizza Hut this lunchtime. It's not going to do any harm. Just one more. I'll give it up next week, you know? Then 10 years later, you've got psoriatic arthritis and you can't walk. and those weeks kind of pile up. But when you are that sick, you get really forced into looking at it. And that's what's so cool about being sick, I think, which is why I never really worry anymore. I don't feel like I need to save the planet. I have enough people coming to me now to ask and have consults and whatever. And so it's nice. You actually have people in front of you that want to heal. But at the beginning of it, you're always hassling your friends and really pissing them off, you know. You end up really punishing them with all this information. And I'm embarrassed when I think the times I've hassled my friends saying, look what I've discovered, and they're not interested. Just leave them alone. They're not interested. They can eat what they like. Leave them alone.
You know what? I think this has been super interesting. I mean, I've obviously heard about the carnivore diet. If you're in the health space, then you've heard of people that are doing it. And, you know, I've listened to some podcasts and that, but I really didn't know a lot about it. I've never done it myself. I know Matt he just tried it for about a week and then stopped. I don't know why he stopped, but I thought that was pretty funny. But you know what? Pretty amazing stuff. And I mean, it does make complete sense to me. If, you know, maybe the science isn't completely there yet, but if you think evolutionary, if you think just, you know, what makes common sense, it really does. So, I mean, it's really interesting to hear you say all this. One last question, just on this, what we didn't touch on, and I figured we would have talked a lot about, is the difference between, you know, grass-fed clean meats versus, you know, typical, you know, farmed meats that you would get, let's say, in the US from, like, you know, huge farms. And that, do you, when you're on the carnivore diet, are you sticking to the good quality clean meats, or do you really care?
Okay. If you'd have asked me that a couple of years ago, I'd have said, always go for the grass-fed, always.
Okay.
But actually, if you really look into it, let's set aside pigs and chickens, because they're treated really badly. They are actually kept in proper feedlots, and they're fed crap, and they're under artificial light, and the whole process is disgusting. And I'm absolutely on the side of the vegans that should stop. But if you look at cattle production, even the US cattle are on grass for most of their lives. This idea that they're shoved into little sheds and fed grains all their lives is actually nonsense. So the healing that I've seen on regular meat, you know, Sean Baker is probably the most famous of all the carnivores now, and he actually prefers the grain-fed meat. And I know what he means. The grass-fed meat, it can taste a little bit gamey and people aren't used to it. It can taste a bit strong. I like it, but I actually, what I prefer is the meat of grain. Let's stop calling them grain-fed, because they're not grain-fed, they're grain-finished. It's only the last couple of months of their lives or whatever that they're given these grains.
Yeah.
And that to me just makes the fat taste wrong. I don't particularly like it. I'll eat any beef, but I don't particularly like the fat off the grain-finished beef. It's just a little bit nasty. So we go to a local farm and we buy all their fat offcuts, and we make our own tallow from it. It costs practically nothing, whereas their meat is like 3 times more expensive than in the supermarket. So I eat any old beef, because you say any old beef, but it's all good. It's all grass-fed and then grain-finished. But the fat of grass-fed animals definitely tastes better. So you kind of crisp it up in the oven. It's beautiful. And then you run it off as tallow that you can then fry steaks in afterwards. And that tastes fantastic. So I would say there's something with the fats that it tastes much nicer, you know, the grass-fed stuff. But as for healing, I'm not seeing any difference, to be honest.
Really? It wouldn't be more inflammatory? That's what I've read anyway.
Yes, but I don't think so. I'm not seeing it I notice no difference myself.
Okay.
But I do notice immediately with chicken. Okay. So if I eat chicken that's been fed nothing but corn, and then they say organic corn-fed chicken like it's an advert, that's for me. I just say stay away, because it's, you know, organic means nothing really these days. And corn-fed chickens are not supposed to eat corn all day long. So, but the cows are not fed that, and you know they've got multiple stomachs, and they've got a liver, and they take these kind of things out. They take these inflammatory things out. If they were fed that all their lives, well, they can't feed them that all their lives because they get too sick. It's only in the last few months. And no, it's not really, I'm not seeing it as inflammatory. There are some people who say they notice it. And if you do, it's something you're going to have to experiment with yourself. But when somebody comes off a regular diet and just starts eating regular, what they call grain-fed meat, that is really actually grain-finished meat, when they do that, I'm seeing such incredible healing, and it's so much better than what they were eating by a factor of hundreds.
Yeah, yeah.
That they're going to see an enormous improvement. And it's only when they get that improvement and then they experiment themselves between the grain-fed and the grass-fed that they will get their own answer. But most people are saying they don't actually notice the difference. Most people are saying that. Now, the other side, of course, is the environmental thing, where people say that, you know, they're causing global warming and whatever, and the grain-fed ones and all these burps and that kind of thing. But actually putting them back on the land and getting rid of these swathes of soya and wheat would replenish the soil. And even if climate change is happening because of methane, which I actually don't believe it is at all, then putting the animals back on the land really, and you know, this carbon sequestration and getting the plants back up to mop up all of these CO2 and methane and whatever it is, you know, this is going to do far more good than getting everybody onto soy and depleting the soil till we can't eat anymore at all. So I think the whole business of grass-fed, it's a huge question. People have a wrong idea about it. You get these vegan videos where there's all this mistreatment of these farmed animals. So everybody gets the idea that they're really mistreated. They're not. They're herd animals. So often the photos are taken, they're all crammed into this pen eating grains. Actually, if they turn the camera around a bit, they would notice a hell of a lot more area than they think they are, than it looks like in the photo. But these animals are herd animals, and they group together in one lump, particularly when they throw the food in. So there they are in one corner, go, look at them packed in. No, they're not. They're just like people queuing up in McDonald's, right? People don't queue up all over the place. They queue up in McDonald's for that crap. The cows are queuing up for the crap. And then they take that photo and don't show the rest of it. And even onto the whole cruelty thing, where it's even become evident recently that sometimes vegans have gone to other countries and actually paid people to abuse the animals so that they can get the footage. And so then this gets into people's heads, and this again, along with the business that it's carcinogenic, and it gets into people's heads that there's something wrong with meat eating. But when you actually scratch the surface and start to look at it, it's to get all these animals back on the land, the big herds. There were massive herds roaming across America. You could sit there apparently for 4 days while a herd of bison went past, you know, a buffalo. And now, so there's probably there's fewer cows than there were, I think, in the 70s. But how are they suddenly causing all these problems? It's just nonsense. If you look at it logically and look past these single studies that end up on the front of tabloid newspapers, you can see that we've really got it wrong on a dietary level and everything. So, long way round of saying grain-fed or grass-fed, I don't know, man. You've got to experiment. You've got to get into that area and just experiment yourself. There are no rules. If you can afford grass-fed all the time, but a lot of people can't. So what am I going to tell them? Eat a loaf of bread? No. I'm going to say just get the best meat you can and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
If you can afford grass-fed from your local, we have a local farm here. It's grass-fed all year round. In the winter, they're fed on the hay, you know, from the summer, and the meat is unbelievable. Really fantastic. If I could afford to feed my whole family from there every single day, I would. We do it when we can, but otherwise we go get the fat from there, we get the organ meats from there, we get the bones from there, all the stuff that's cheaper, or you get short ribs or whatever that are the cheaper cuts, but much more nutritious because they've got fatty bits on them, you know, and you got the bones there. So you come out with all the nutritious stuff for far less money. But otherwise, if we get kind of ground beef or something that everybody wants, that's, you know, supermarket stuff's fine. In England, it's, you know, Scottish beef that's out, I'd probably pastured the whole year, most of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine, even though it doesn't say so on the front, because they just say, well, why would you want to treat them any other way?
Yeah.
People, you know, farmers love their animals. They're their livelihood. When you actually listen to these farmers being interviewed, they absolutely adore their animals and they take tremendous care of them. And it's in their interests that they're in the best possible health. So why would they risk their health? Why would they risk them cramming them into some horrible shed? It doesn't happen. It's a very dodgy view we've got. If you listen to some interviews by a guy called Peter Ballestead, he's on Sean Baker's Human Performance Outliers podcast. Get him on, talk about the environmental side of it. Amazing. When you actually hear from somebody who really is in the thick of it and knows what's going on, you get a completely different view of exactly what's happening in the cattle industry. So from an environmental and inflammatory standpoint, I really wouldn't be frightened of grain-fed at all, because it isn't grain-fed. It's only just grain-finished.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, listen, I have one last question. It's a question I ask all the guests that come on my show. Before I do, why don't you tell us where people can find you on the interwebs and where we can learn more about the carnivore diet or whatever it is that you're else reading?
Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, the place to go, I guess, is pureactivity, one word, .net. Sign up to the newsletter. I've got loads of stuff coming out every month about what I'm doing. I have a YouTube channel, just bung my name in there, but you can find it all from Pure Activity. Sign up for the newsletter. There's a free ebook with that, which is The Wheel of Health, where I try and go into all these different aspects of health and what are the really important pillars of it that we miss. And some great links to further research for that. And I've, on my website, I've got my books. I've got a carnivore frequently asked questions, but with loads of ebook with loads of links to all the different aspects. Every question you can think of. Will it cause cancer? Will it strain my kidneys? Will it cause this or that? What can I eat? What are all of these questions that people ask and more. And the thing that I'm really proud of at the moment that I've got is my autoimmunity course. I've got an online autoimmunity course called the Subtraction Method. You can find that through pureactivity.net as well. And it's a 30-video course where I really, really go deep into everything, every aspect of what could be causing your autoimmunity. And tons of worksheets and links to further research that will just blow you away and give you tremendous confidence. So that's available on there. And that's about it, really. I've got a Facebook group called 100% Carnivore and Beyond that's real fun. I'm English. I like to insist that it's very irreverent and people can talk about just disgraceful things and misbehave. So if you're fed up with all the serious carnivore groups that throw you out for putting a picture of broccoli up, we don't care. We don't care. We'll put up with anything. Lots of toilet humor, lots of banter, whatever you like, But also lots of the whole spiritual side and light side and biohacking stuff as well. So it's a mix of everything.
Well, I'll put the links in the show notes for anyone who wants to check all that out. Last question for you though, Phil, is this. You've been on a weight loss journey, I was going to say. I guess you were on that too, but you've been on a health journey. See, it's late here. It's almost 10 p.m. I'd usually be in bed by now. But so you've been on a health journey for many years. I mean, you've tried basically everything. So I'm actually really excited to hear your answer here. Let's say that you were to go back to the very beginning of your health journey and you forgot everything that you currently know now. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were just starting out?
That's actually quite easy. Be wrong. Keep being inquisitive. Really accept that quite possibly most of what you know right now is wrong. Don't hold on to any ideas. I'm not attached to carnivory. All I can say is it's by far the best intervention I've found so far. And I seem to have been through every single diet that I can think of. But am I wrong? Will I find out something way better? Very possibly. And when I do, I'll certainly be on to people about it. I don't know what it is. If it's sort of jumping up and down in a mankini with a stick of celery sticking out of your ass, maybe this will cure everything. I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with something like this. Maybe everybody else will suddenly discover something like this. But at the moment in diet, carnivore seems to be the end of the road. But even within that, there's things I'm wrong about every day. Like the grain-fed stuff where, if you talked to me 2 years ago, absolutely get grass-fed. It's awful. They're treated badly, these grain-fed animals. You actually really look into it, you find you're wrong. You find you're wrong about so many things. So really examine all your beliefs. There is a great quote I'll probably finish with. It was by Ram Tzu. Wayne Lickerman he was like a non-dual teacher. And he once had this wonderful byline on one of the things where he was doing some kind of meeting. And it was, bring me all your dearest held beliefs, and with any luck, you'll leave without them. Mm. And I thought that was so beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Because those dearest held beliefs are generally the things that are holding us back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Absolutely. There you go.
I love that. I love that answer. And you know what? I loved this episode. I didn't have to say a whole lot because you just went on rant.
Sorry, man. I've just seen how long it is.
You know what? It's great though. I love it because, you know, one, it's something that we haven't talked about on this podcast yet. And it's just a lot of, you know, it's a lot of good information, but you just explain it in a really fun and interesting and kind of non-opinionated way, except for when it comes to vegans. There's quite an opinion there. But it's just, yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us on here. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm now in your Facebook group and excited to get in on some of the banter and learn from that as well. But Phil, thank you so much for finding the time today and jumping on here.
You're so welcome. One little note because of the veganism thing. One little thing before I go. Please understand I have nothing against vegans whatsoever. What I have a problem with is veganism. You know, I know a lot of vegans. I've grown up among them. I was one, and I have no problem. You know, I don't like it when I get a load of death threats on my YouTube channel. Obviously, they get very militant about it. Mm-hmm. But I believe it's a very dangerous dogma. I believe it's a religion, and pretty dangerous, leading a lot of people astray. But vegans, no, man. I mean, most of the people I know now are vegans or ex-vegans. And we're cool. Everybody's cool. Everybody's on their path. Just I don't like the dogma. I think it's doing some harm. That's all. So vegans, I love you, all of you. Chill.
Throw that in there. It's funny that they're death threats. They're vegans. They can't be killing humans. Come on.
No, man, they go nuts. I hope you die of cancer. I hope your children get taken away.
Wow.
You should be murdered. Yeah, it goes on and on. Yeah, I get a lot of it.
All right, Phil. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day there in the UK. And I'm going to head to bed.